Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the National Guard products 5060B brown silicone fin self-adhesive gasketing. This is what a roll of it looks like. This happens to be a 21-foot roll, just not important that it's 21. This is just what that happens to look like. Okay, so what we've got here is a roll of brown silicone fin adhesive. I have a little piece of it projecting from the packaging here so we can get a look at it. Silicone base material. Self-adhesive, peel away paper back that's there. The size, they have it at 1/2 inch wide and 5/16 tall. So it's 1/2 inch. Fairly accurate. 5/16, again, fairly accurate. That's real accurate. Okay. Brown is the color. And this material, we're going to get into the varieties of options on this. We'll talk about that in a moment. What's important to know immediately is that this material is UL10B and UL10C, fire rated up to 3 hour. This is going to be smoke and draft control listed as well. ANSI BHMA certified, air infiltration tested. And again, it's a 21-foot roll. Now there is a link below this video to a document called Product Brochure, and that's very handy because it will allow you to review this item, the 5060, on a one-page perspective compared against the other items that are immediately related to it. And the 5050 and the 2525 could be argued are more common. Not that they're better or superior, because the 5060 is listed for the same sorts of applications. The teardrop shaped 5050 and 2525 are indeed more common, but probably because that's been historically the shape that people think about when they're requiring smoke and draft control. Okay, that's really the key word. When you have an opening, such as a hotel door suite, you're very likely going to be in a position, you will certainly be in a position if you're the contractor, the developer, the owner, the architect specifying it, to create a compliance of the entire opening with smoke and draft control listings. Okay, the 5060 complies with all of that. It's easy to install, it's inexpensive, and allows you to have a completely rated, properly rated opening. The other items on here, I can't argue one over the other. I've used all of the above. I do happen to like the teardrop shape, but that's probably because it's simply, for me, more ubiquitous. It is indeed incredibly common, and you do see it in lots of applications. The fin style is going to be available in only two finishes: the brown, which is the 5060B, or the 5060CL. It's clear. It will be available in either 17 or 21-foot rolls. Okay, and that right there in itself may be a limitation to you, because as you look at that product brochure, you will notice that the 5050 is available in 5 colors, lots of roll lengths, including a very long 300-foot roll length, which certainly makes sense if you have lots of openings to do, with this sort of material. What some people like about the 5060 is that it applies on the same part of the frame throughout its installation. Okay, so the head and the latch jamb and the hinge side, the material is put down to the rabbet of the frame, rather than the rabbet of the frame being for the latch side, on the hinge side of some material, but then the face of the stop, maybe a bit more consistent, I suppose you could argue in that regard. Now, moving on to the installation instructions that are linked below this video as well. And these are really the most important piece of information that can be conveyed before the sale, during installation, after the sale, sort of valuable data to take in, to review. So the installation instructions are not only as they're named, but they also give guidance as to how best to achieve long-lasting, permanent sort of installation results. So here we go. And I've installed this material lots of times. And I've installed it in the intended original purpose, smoke and draft control. I've also installed it in the application where I've simply wanted to augment existing weather stripping. Why would I want to do that? Well, the material's easy to install, it's effective, and it's inexpensive. Let's start with the installation instructions. So, up at the top, seals against smoke, fire, air, sound, and weather, unaffected by sunlight, ozone, and ultraviolet rays. That is part and parcel of it being silicone. It's going to be a good, durable sort of item. Excellent compression, door latches easily. Let's talk about that for a moment. One reason that someone would use a 50/60 is going to be because what you have is possibly a smaller margin between the edge of the frame and the edge of the door. Okay? It's actually fairly common that you're going to have a smaller margin because of many, possible conditions. The door might just be too large. The frame might be moved in at one end, or something might be unusual in the sense that you now have less room than you originally expected, generally because of improper frame installation, or the door again is just simply too wide. A typical 3-foot door is going to need to be 35 and 3/4, 35 and 13/16. But if your door approaches 35 and 7/8, then those traditional 50/50, 25/25 may work. But the 50/50, the other models that are there, teardrop shaped, are really not well suited for that easy sort of fold over compression that a fin design is going to give you when you have those tight margins. If you've got a fire rated door, it is completely impractical to consider sizing that door down for lots of reasons. First of all, you'd be precluded from planing it in the field. It would violate the fire rating. Even if you did so, the door's probably pre-finished. And even if you did so, you're going to have to remortise all of the hardware depending on what side of the door that you do it on. So the point of the matter is, if you have a tight opening, let use the 50/60. Problem is solved. You don't want to modify any sort of fire rated door, because it'll compress down to that 1/16 of an inch with a very low compression force required. That means that your spring hinge or your door closer will still allow the door to latch. And if you have a fire rated door, and even if it's just smoke and draft control, that's a fire rated door. Whether it's smoke and draft control all the way out to 3 hour, you have the same obligation to fulfill. It must be self-closing, but it must self-latch. And if either of those instances aren't maintained or obtained, then you technically don't have a fire rated door. Now, installation instructions. The surface temperature of the frame must be above 50 Fahrenheit for the adhesive to bond. Room temperature. There needs to be a heat and climate controlled installation, and quite frankly, the application of this material can be well done at the end. Carpeting stage of construction would be a good time to do this. It's not going to work if your temperatures are low. I wouldn't attempt it below standard room temperature, because I've never done it and I don't know what sort of success you'll have with it being a colder, cooler surface. In addition to temperature, the paint or the stain or whatever treatment that has been done to the frame must be fully cured. If it's paint, it's got to be at least a week, because the outside paint could be set, but the paint underneath might not yet be cured. And you'll find that you'll have failure if that's the case as well. If you've got a gloss finish or some sort of varnish over a wood frame, which you certainly could, I would take like a rock wool product, and I would rough that up to get myself some surface area in order to give the adhesive its best possibility at doing the job that it has to. Speaking of temperature, I personally would not order any of this material unless I knew that I had a need for it. It has a shelf life of 1 year, but 1 year is really not that long, especially if you're not sure if you have a need for it. And if you do put it on the shelf, you must have 50% relative humidity, and you must be certainly at room temperature, 75 degrees, they say. Now, moving forward, there is a step 2, talks about clean the frame with the wipe provided. It is so crucial that the opening, pardon me, that the frame be clean and completely free of dust and debris. And while you really can't see it in here, there's evidence right at my thumb. There is like a wet map that's included with every roll of this material. It's that important. Not only cured proper room temperature, but utterly free of dust and debris. The first time I installed the material, I got it clean. But if I took my finger and ran it down several, a few feet of the frame, there would be evidence of dust still on there. Sure enough, that caused a failure, a small failure, but it was a failure bad enough where I had to literally remove everything and start over. Clean the frame with the wipe provided to remove the dust, oil, grease, dirt. Wax-coated or high-gloss painted surfaces may require roughening of the surface with a Scotch-Brite pad or sandpaper so the adhesive will properly bond. Rough it up, make sure all the particulates are removed, you're giving it the additional surface area, and you ought to be good to go. Step 3 is measure and pre-cut the pieces to fit the head and the jambs, per the drawing that's listed here in terms of where you're going to apply them. Now the reasoning is you're going to measure and pre-cut is this. You've accurately measured, you've accurately cut. When you install the material, you should not have any extra length left over. The reason that you're requested to proceed in this fashion is it will be a telltale sign that you have unintentionally stretched the material. You don't want to take and roll it down. Some people have taken a seam roller and rolled it down. That's a bad idea because that material is going to want to resume its natural elasticity. That'll be a point of failure. When you're applying the material, just lots of pressure, flat down. You've got your pre-cut piece, you've double-checked, lots of pressure, straight down. Moving to step 4, remove protective backing 1 to 2 feet at a time. I'm going to grab that paper and just peel it away. I like working with a shorter length because I get better control over how straight my installation is because that steel frame's nothing but straight lines. And I've seen installations of this material and similar that looked terrible because it was completely wavy, done in a very hasty fashion. And while obviously no one had seen it, I could only think that it would be part and parcel to an improper installation, potentially compromising the integrity of the fire-rated listing of the frame. The other reason I remove less paper backing rather than more is I don't want to unintentionally bump the material onto the frame and pull it off. Even though you are permitted a resetting very quickly and very immediately, you don't want the adhesive picking up anything off the frame at all. You might bump it onto something other than the exact location. Position on frame were illustrated, which is on the right-hand side of the link to the installation instructions. And by the way, all that is the card that's inside of here. This is exactly what I'm looking at, and that is exactly what you're looking at when you look at the installation link. Position on the frame were illustrated, allowing approximately a 1/16 of an inch seal between the frame for clearance when compressed. So what they're saying is from the frame to where the seal starts, allow yourself a small amount of room just so that you can compensate for any sort of stretching that the material will undergo when it's under compression. Adhere by pressing firmly, approximately 15 pounds required straight down along the entire length. They say do not remove and relocate. Okay? National Guard says not to. My experience has allowed me to immediately correct a problem and apply lots of pressure. Now 15 pounds is a lot. If you think about a standard door when you push it open, if it's handicap compliant, that's about 5 pounds of pressure, maybe 7 pounds of pressure. A very heavy door might be 10 or 12 pounds of pressure. So they're saying you need to give it a very liberal amount of pressure when applying. Do not rub along the length from one end toward the other during the installation, as the gasket will stretch, and that will cause failure because it's not adhering properly because it's going to snap back. Make sure the seal does not impede proper closing and latching of the door. We discussed that earlier. The listings that this is compliant with are then below there on the installation instructions. And while I have, again, used it for its intended purpose, I have also, as I said earlier, used it with success to augment. What I have found this material really good at is helping retard the transmission of particulate. Shop setting in one part of the building, you've got your demising wall, and you've got a showroom. Very common installation, a very common application. You want to retard the transmission of the sound, and this will help, but you, after a month, you don't want the small particulate that's hanging in the air of a shop setting, wood, metal, whatever it is, to get through that opening and deposit itself on your displayed material. You know, that sort of scenario is probably going to have a back door and a front door, and when both of them are open at the same time, that air will come rushing through. I found that this material was very helpful, as evidenced by just opening the door and looking at the installation a month later, and you'll see how much, you know, has been captured. It's easy, it's inexpensive, and it's, you know, effective, as I had said earlier. In conclusion, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up the full line product catalog from National Guard products, and what that will allow you to do is to review all things weather stripping related from National Guard, whose name is quite synonymous with commercial weather stripping, whether it be perimeter gasketing like the 5060B or traditional perimeter gasketing, thresholds, door sweeps, material made of aluminum, stainless steel, architectural bronze, and then of course neoprene and silicone and vinyl and polyurethane and you know, TPE material, a variety of items. They also have a comprehensive offering of steel vision frames that you'll use in both wood and metal doors. If you have any questions on the National Guard products, 5060B, self-adhesive silicone fin style seal, or any other National Guard product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.